So I'm going to put her name in that. I truly believe that a dog's love is a gift from God. There's no doubt that I will see Callie again in heaven. There's no question I will miss her until then. I've learned a lot about life, love, healing, humor, God, and yes, a little veterinary medicine from this good friend. In conclusion, when Mr. Webster wrote the definition of vocation with a calling, I think he must have known how I feel and how I live. My talk covered what I've done with God's help, and this is what I intend to do with my vocation in the future. I have an exit strategy for Barrett Station. I hate to say goodbye to it, but in 2019, I'll still work there. I just won't do all those other administration stuff, and that will allow me to set up a non-for-profit organization to help the elderly keep pets in their homes. I started with thanks, and I'd like to end with thanks. I didn't get to rib you as much as I had planned, Mike, because there's too many people in the room, but I do thank you. And I thank your kindness for you guys coming and you filming it, and I really appreciate you guys and what you do. Amen.
Carolyn, stay right there. So I'd like to open this to questions.
Sure.
If you have questions, I'd like to invite them. But I was struck by some of your language here. You felt lucky about your choice. You felt God's hand in it. What's meant to be. You talk about God's guiding your hands. And I'm also struck by the personal authenticity and integrity and how this is all woven together. Were you taught that? Did it just happen? From your mom, your dad, the sense that life is to be integrated, it's lived as a whole?
Yeah.
Because you come across that way.
I think both my parents lived life that way. Mm-hmm. I don't think we were ever preached to in that regard. I remember my dad frequently speaking about heaven on earth, and I think that bringing God into your world is part of that. Mm-hmm. And letting him in. I mean, he's there. He's just whether you look for him and interact with him. But I don't recall any formal, let's talk about how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and I...
It was modeled in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other question, maybe this will get others started, is this integration does not seem to fall into, okay, there's spiritual stuff over here, and then it's all one thing. You almost come across as if being a vet is worship.
It is worship. Discipleship isn't just going out and doing things for the poor. It's everyday living, and I think if you do compartmentalize, faith is here, and now I'm going to go have fun. It doesn't work that way. Or now I'm going to go to work. I think for me, and I certainly wouldn't be judging anyone else, but for me, I don't think I could enjoy work like I do if I didn't have that in it. But it wouldn't be me either. Any other questions? You got one brewing, I can see.
Was it at University of Missouri that you were a dorm mate with Dr. Mayer's daughter?
Yes, she was on the same floor as I was.
And what were some of the challenges of their vet school?
They have the first 2 years as book work. And for me, that was the hardest part. And then the last 2 years was putting it all together in practice in blocks. So 1 2-month block we would go to be a large animal doctor of cows and pigs, and then another 2-month block would be horses, and then 2 months of surgery, 2 months of internal medicine, and so there's a few more, but that was you went year round. The challenging part was to be awake enough. I mean, it was grueling. I lost all contact with current events, and I didn't read for fun anymore because I was reading all the time. But it was, somebody said, would you do it again? And I think if they'd asked me that right after school, I would question it, just how hard it was, but absolutely I'd do it again. But that's how it's structured. They're thinking about changing that. They're thinking about going large animal and small animal and making that claim early so that you are only taught a certain, but that's a tough can of worms.
Carolyn, can you say more about the nonprofit that you want to set up?
Well, in the, I guess I could say 32 years that I've been practicing, one of the things that has really struck me as an important thing, and then lo and behold, lots of studies have proven that animals in older people's lives lengthen their lives. It increases their quality of life, and it's not just from a standpoint of making them walk, although that's one thing. But depression is less. The need to care for something, to be loved and love back. Those are the things that are very important. And as you get homebound or in the years that you're no longer traveling, this is their companion. I see that my mom is 85 this year, 86 this year, and she would not be the same woman if she didn't have that golden retriever. I just know it. And he's so important to her. And she is out and about, and he's still important. So one of the things is that lots of times the biggest reason people don't hold on to pets at that age, that older age, is because they don't want to have their pet outlive them because they don't have any plans for that pet. So an organization that would be named in a will that we will find a home, we will not euthanize your animal, you have our written word on it, is a very good thing. The other thing is sometimes people can't afford it. I came upon this concept when I was in church, and I carried a pager, and it went off, and I had forgotten to, I had it on silence, but I left the church and I called, and it was this lady, and she's on oxygen. She had a Sheltie, and she was actually working on that Sunday. So I ended up seeing her later after she finished work. But the only reason she kept a job was to pay for the ability to keep her dog in her life. She would have been fine if she didn't have the vet bills. So it's in her memory and honor that I decided on that day that this is what I would do. And there's ways that we can get money to help those people. And my role as a veterinarian and my influence as a veterinarian in the community will be helpful with other veterinarians to get on board with this. I just have to structure it. So, yes, ma'am.
What do you do on the weeks where things don't seem to be going so well?
Carolyn, can you repeat the question?
Yes. What do you do during the weeks that don't go so well? And that's part of a veterinarian's. I mean, you if anybody says it's all puppies and kittens, you got to relook at it. And what's interesting in my experience is that on a day-to-day basis, you can deal with a few here and a few there, but then every 7 years, and I can't really express why it's every 7 years, but I've had other veterinarians tell me the same thing. There will be a domino effect of everything all at once piling up, and then there's just a period in which you just have to let go and cry or do whatever, however you can cope with it. Because and some veterinarians, unfortunately, not just vets, doctors too, they'll put walls up. Now, that wall is actually to protect themselves from those 7-year catastrophes. But when they put that wall up, they're not allowing the people in. And then they're misinterpreted. And then I know a lot of veterinarians that Well, one of the places I used to work, I noticed that they never went back to the same vet that euthanized their dog. They would always go to me or a different veterinary clinic altogether. And it's because, and I know that gentleman cared, but it was because he didn't let them know he cared. Because if you let the clients know, then you're more vulnerable. Well, to answer your question, prayer is a biggie. And it was during one of I had dated somebody for 8 years, and he did not go to church, and that wasn't my wish, but I didn't want to try to change him. But what made the difference between us getting married and not getting married was during one of those times, and I went to his house for dinner that night, and he said, "So how was your day?" And I just burst out in tears, and I said, "I had to euthanize this and this and that," and then everything came crashing down. And he said, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Well," I didn't want to ask him to pray. I said, "Just hold me." And he said, "That's ridiculous. They're just animals." And we broke up 1 week later. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me because that was so important. And now, I was trying to answer your question, didn't mean to get off topic, but now those times still hit. But I have a husband who will pray together and he'll hold me, and we don't have to talk, and it's just a healing. So, if you didn't, I cry frequently. Not every euthanasia, but I do cry frequently. And when I first started being a veterinarian, and I said to my boss, "I'm crying." And he said, "Don't worry." He said, "It's when you stop crying that this is a problem." He said, if it doesn't affect you on a regular basis, then you need to watch that. And I thought that was pretty, and there's sometimes that I would think I would cry, but sometimes I don't cry to help the client. I don't know, it's an odd thing. We also hired grief counselors to come in and talk to our staff occasionally, because it's not just the veterinarians these staff members are loving and caring, and we'll have counselors come and talk about grief. It's a good question, by the way. Do you have any questions?
That's not a question, but just a comment of what I hear is that the resisting the temptation or choosing an alternative other than putting up the wall of choosing tears over isolation, of acknowledging the need for grief.
Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot with children. A lot of children and men, sorry, gentlemen in the group, but they feel like I don't want to be silly, I don't want to cry, and I'll, that's when the veterinarian that they respect says, "Oh, please, this is if you hadn't loved, then you might not want to cry, but you've loved, and that's part of this." And I don't know. There's a lot of psychology in veterinary medicine, and that's a common area where it comes out.
Do you have any question or comment? What I've heard from her, I hear a lot from you.
Okay.
And you're a horse guy.
So am I.
I tell dog stories. He tells horse stories.
We have a dog too, and have had dogs. The horses are new for us, just about 2 years. I don't have the question formulated. It's one of the things that I've learned so much about from a counselor as well is I've just learned more about the nonverbal communication, the connection emotionally that happens between people as well as
Sure.
with the horses in particular. They've been my best teacher in that.
They are amazing at reading and reacting. they can pick up things you don't even know you're feeling. Fear is one of them. I'm lucky not to have that, but that's why I can ride some horses that other people can't ride either. I've been riding since I was 12.
Reminds me of, you raised the thing of, do dogs go to heaven? C.S. Lewis, in his Brief Observed, takes up that whole question. Lewis was a cat.
Yep.
A cat person. He said it's pure speculation. So he can't prove it biblically. But God names us into existence. He calls us into existence. There's something about our relationships with animals in which we name them. If we're called to be God's imitators, and He recognizes us that way, maybe our recognition of the pet gives them a kind of eternal life as well. So I'm not talking about the lion out in the forest.
Right.
I'm talking about our pets. But he also said something along the lines of what you and Dan are saying here, that without that kind of what he called non-verbal communication, you get right there he says, oh, the universe is bigger than I thought it was before. He says the way Christians have sometimes thought about the world, okay, it's my soul matters and nothing else. I think that's a kind of flat, boring, really disinteresting kind of view of reality. It seems that what you do for a living, coming in contact with animals and seeing them that way, you get a sense of depth of the world, of experience that not a whole lot of us experience. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I completely agree. People that have never had animals, and then they have their first dog or their first cat, and just like you said, there's like a whole new world that they hadn't even known existed. I agree with that.
Is there any particular given gift that you enjoy the most practicing in your vocation?
Is there a particular gift that I enjoy? I love surgery. I'm the surgeon of the practice from a standpoint that if there's any hard surgery that some of the vets don't want to do, it comes to me. I love ophthalmology as well. One of the things I do that's one of my favorite gifts, and I gave it back because I had received it when I was 15, and that was, I have a volunteer program for 15-year-olds and above that every summer, 4 hours a week, they come and they volunteer to see if they want to be a veterinarian. And it's a wonderful win-win type of, I've done that for years. I think I've gotten over 27 veterinarians into school. And even if they say they don't want to be veterinarians, that's okay too. That's a win.
Caroline, I know how busy you are. By the way, I should mention when we talked about this, I said our schedules don't work. This was her idea to come in.
That's because I didn't want you guys to have to listen to he said, I'm just going to play the tape that you did last year. And I said, that would be horribly boring.
Well, you're never bored. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
So that explains all those young people. I never knew those.
They have volunteers written on there that wear the badge that says volunteer. Yeah, that explains it.